And I wish, I feel like I need to put a timer on. Hi, Mom. Hi, Kristen. Christy Foudy. Hi, Emily. Hi, Sarah. Brenda Conrad, of course. Brenda, when are we going to go to Bamboo? Okay, it's 8:30. Let's get started. I have notes. I'm so proud of myself. I usually like to just speak off the cuff, but you just never know. Before we get started, will you please share this video on your page? Will you click share and share it to your page? I am not here to sell anything tonight except a mindset. Hi, Rossi, I love you. We're selling a mindset tonight. The Lord, if you don't believe in God, that's totally fine. But like he and I talk, and he put this on my heart way back in December, probably the beginning of December. And he was just like, you need to do this. You need to just pour into people who need hope. And thank you. If you have shared this, tell me you shared it, or put a heart or something like Kayla did. Thank you so much. Make sure you give me some hearts. I think that bumps up the video on Facebook. Hopefully there are no creepers tonight. But anyway, okay. Make sure you share it. But anyway, this is just for you. I am a mom. I do have a business, but I am not going to talk to you about what I sell or what I do. So anyway, welcome. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Thank you for being here. I really didn't want you to be here for me. I really wanted you to be here for you. I really believe that what I'm going to share with you tonight is going to help you. So I'm really the type of person who I love to share my stories sometimes, and other times I can get really like, do I really have anything to say that means anything to anybody? So I'm really going out on a limb here in faith, just believing that this story is going to be used for somebody. Before the video started, I just asked God, I said, please let me help somebody, even if it's just one person. So let's get started. Welcome. My name is Lauren Bretz. I live in Central Florida. I just moved here about 6 months ago. I'm so excited to be here. I got to move a mile from my mama and my dad, and my sister lives real close by. My other sister lives far away, but I really feel closer to her. I need her to come here. But I'm really excited about sharing with you tonight. I have a sweet husband who's over in Africa, and 5 children who are upstairs who may interrupt me, but that is fine. They are not interruptions. They're my highest priority. Hi, friends. Make sure you share this video, please, if you're just joining. But just as a disclaimer, I'm a mom. I am not an expert. I am not a, credentialed person. I have a college degree. A bachelor's in psychology from Southeastern University, whoop whoop. But I am not a credentialed person. I'm just a mom who didn't ever really want this to be her story. I did not have kids so that this would be my story. I didn't want to become the health nut lady, the crunchy granola mom. I didn't want that to be me. I grew up on McDonald's and ramen and Wendy's and Arby's and Bagel Bites and Pizza Pockets. If you did too, give me a shout out. I grew up on canned vegetables sometimes. I grew up on Velveeta mac and cheese. Makes me salivate a little bit just thinking about it. I grew up on the standard American diet. And I'm not ashamed of it. My mom was the best mom. She just did the best that she knew how to do. And so yeah, that was how I was raised and brought up. So why are we here tonight? Okay, why are we here? I have three goals. Let me look at my goals for you. I have 3 goals. Number 1, that you will know that you are not alone. That you will know you're not alone. Good night, buddy. You're not alone in your suffering with yourself. You're not alone in your suffering with your husband or your kids or whoever you're taking care of. If you're not the one suffering, but you have someone in your life who is suffering, you are not alone. Okay? Number 1 goal, at the end of this time together, I want you to know you're not alone. Number 2, I want you to learn to ask different questions. Questions that will help you to find the answers that you really need. Sometimes we don't even know what questions to ask, and sometimes we don't even know what answers we're looking for. And then number 3, that you will feel strengthened and that there are answers, that you can find a way and that you don't have to stay in the same place and feel stuck. Okay? Those are my 3 goals for doing this. Again, I'm not trying to sell you anything. There will be no closing statements about what you should order at the end of this talk. So that's why we're here. We're here for you. I'm not trying to make money, just trying to help. All right, so let's jump into the first story. I have 3 stories for you tonight, and I'm gonna really work hard on being fairly quick. First story, I already talked a little bit about the diet that I grew up on. Again, not ashamed. My mom was an incredible mother, All through elementary school, I always missed the maximum number of days that you could miss, that were allowed to miss. If you're just joining, please share this on your page. Thank you so much for joining. But I always miss, I remember every single year I would get my report card and it would say you missed 16 or 16 and a half days. And we would always just be like, oh my goodness, you know? Did any of you experience that? Did any of you miss like the max number of days that you could miss at elementary school? I remember that so clearly, and I was sick a lot. I missed a lot of school. I had stomach aches, headaches, constipation, and I was a super social butterfly little girl. I did not have anxiety about going to school. So I know that some children get stomach aches before they go to school, or they fake not wanting to go to school because they're afraid to take a test, or they're afraid to whatever, but I was not afraid to go to school. I loved going to school. I loved the whole deal. I did have a whole thing happen in one of my elementary school years, but anyway, I loved going to school. I loved doing school. I loved learning. I loved playing. I loved the whole deal. So by the time I was 10, I was very ill and started taking antibiotics. My throat was constantly in pain. I only pooped maybe once a week, which some people think is fine. I'm just here to tell you it's not. It was a horrible experience for me. My throat hurt all the time. I had multiple rounds of strep throat, multiple rounds of antibiotics leading up to the age of 10. But at the age of 10, I started taking antibiotics, and I took them for 2 years straight. And I'll never forget the sweet doctor that, I talked about this a little bit on one of my posts a couple weeks ago, but the sweet doctor that we went to, the sweet pediatrician, he was always just so stumped. He would look in my throat and it was white. And this might be TMI. If you're just joining, please share this. Thank you so much for joining. I love you guys. But he would look at my throat, and my throat was white, and my tongue was white, and the inside of my mouth was white, and the back of my throat had pus pockets. It was so gross. My mom was she was so amazing. I could cry about my mom like this whole video, because I think about the turmoil that she would have gone through, feeling so helpless with her daughter being so ill. Anyway, and the doctor was just stumped. So he would just prescribe an antibiotic, and then we would try that, and it would not make anything better. And then we would go back and we would try another antibiotic, and it was just antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic until I was 12 years old. And by the time I was 12, my parents had to take me out of school because I was basically bedridden at that point as a 12-year-old. So here's our first root cause, okay? Here's our first root cause. This is the coolest thing. So my mom was just like, you know what? We're done. Oh, let me tell you another thing that was super gross, could be TMI. I had like things oozing out of my head. Like I would get these scabs and they would ooze and smell behind my ears. It was so disgusting. so disgusting and embarrassing. I mean, I would have these huge lesions in my scalp that would itch and ugh. 12-year-old little girl, you guys, 11-year-old little girl, the same age as my daughter. My daughter's about to turn 11. My son is 12. So my mom finally was just like, enough is enough. This is not working. And so she started taking me to a chiropractor, precious chiropractor, and we found root causes like candida. Have you ever heard of candida? C-A-N-D-I-D-A. We found that it was an overgrowth of candida and yeast in my body. So we went on a candida diet, and of course back then, there weren't as many options for fun foods. It was miserable for me, of course, as a 12-year-old, because by the time I was 12, I was totally addicted to pizza and sugar and candy and ice cream and all the things. And for probably 6 months, Mom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I was on a candida diet. It was brown rice, chicken, applesauce, red potatoes. I remember couldn't have russet potatoes, had to be red. I mean, it was just, I ate this rice bread and this rice cheese. It was no yeast, no sugar, all that. So anyway, hi friends. If you just joined, please go ahead and share the video on your page. So anyway, that was our first root cause, was candida, okay? Second story, we're gonna well, and I do want to say, within 6 months, I was in bed. I was bedridden for a long time. And then I was well. I did the candida diet. I took a ton of herbs. We went to a chiropractor. We even did acupuncture, which was super weird back then. I mean, this was in the 90s. Super weird, but I'm so thankful for my mom that she was willing to do the weird things, because then I was finally able to get well. So fast forward, of course, after that was all over, I went back to eating regular things and felt terrible all the time. But then I was in high school and whatever. I got my act back together in college. But fast forward to when I had my son, Peter. This would have been in 2004. I had Peter, had a really hard pregnancy with him. I was only 20 years old when I got pregnant with him. I had a hard pregnancy. Gained a ton of weight. I drank chocolate milk and ate grilled cheese every day. I ate whatever I wanted. And I was depressed. I had chronic yeast infections. I had horrible headaches. It was horrible. I was sick. But fast forward, I had Peter. And here's one thing that I want to tell you about my pregnancy with Peter that really started to get me thinking. And this was in 2004. Right? 2003, maybe? 2004. No, 2005. I went to the doctor when I was first pregnant, and at that time, of course, because of my mom, I was familiar with herbal remedies and teas and supplements, and I did understand some things about food, but very little, but I did understand herbs and vitamins and supplements. I was taking a few things. And I would drink chamomile tea at night to help me sleep, because of course, as I was first pregnant, I could never sleep. And I remember going to the doctor, and he was telling me the list of things that I couldn't eat when I was pregnant. And he asked me, do you drink herbal teas? And I said, well, yeah, I drink chamomile tea every night before I go to bed. And he was like, okay, you cannot have chamomile tea. You can have a Diet Coke every day, but you cannot have chamomile tea. And that was I think that was my very first interaction with someone where I was like, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. And I said to him, why can't I have chamomile tea? And he said, well, we just don't know what it's going to do to your baby, so you need to fully avoid all herbal teas. And I was just like, common sense in my mind, I was thinking, but they're plants. Like you eat a salad. But he said I could have Diet Coke, which is full of coloring and aspartame, and I don't judge you if you drink Coke or Diet Coke, but I'm just saying, like, everybody knows that Coke is not as good for you as water or an herbal tea, right? So as a 20-year-old, I was 20 years old. That was my first time where I was like, I'm not sure we're asking the right questions. I think we're putting down something and elevating something else, and we have it backwards. So anyway, my son Peter was born, and I had an unmedicated birth and then a traumatic postpartum experience. And I was postpartum depressed and all those things, but that's not part of our story tonight. And I actually read a book about, and just prepare yourself, I did vaccines a little bit differently, and this video is not about anti-vax. It's just not. But I read a book about delaying vaccines. So when he was 5 months old, I took him in and I got the DTaP and polio, and that was it. They looked at me like I was insane. Of course, I was all alone. My husband was not with me. I had no mother or no friends around to come with me to the appointments. And he got DTaP and polio at 5 months and 7 months and 9 months. Well, after the first one at 5 months, around the 6-month mark, all of a sudden, if I gave him any solid food, or even if I nursed him, well, which leading up to that, he would spit up all the time, like vomiting. It was terrible, projectile. But at around 6 or 7 months, I would feed him solid food and he would throw it up. Especially if it was just like oatmeal. Maybe when he was 8 or 9 months, I would give him a little bit of egg. I know people's opinions about when to introduce solids and what to introduce. Let's not talk about that right now. But I would just give him a little bit, you know, just trying things here and there, and he'd throw everything up. And by the time he was about a year old, he would throw up everything I gave him to eat, like vomiting and diarrhea. And I was just like, what is going on with my son? And then suddenly he was not happy anymore, which he was a very happy baby. He started breaking out in certain rashes. He started getting constipated or having diarrhea. Things just weren't going well. So I called an amazing friend of mine, whose name is Corey, and I was crying, and my husband was in Iraq, and she was like, what about food allergies? Have you explored the possibility of food allergies? And I was like, what? I have no idea what you're talking about. So I took him to the military hospital, and they did a prick test and some other kind of test, and they found that he didn't have any allergies. So they referred me to a specialist. And again, I don't want to go on and on, but the allergist did a battery of tests over on him and did find that he was allergic to like 37 out of 40 foods, which was totally overwhelming. And if any of you know what this feels like as a mother, please give me a thumbs up or a heart or something to tell me that you know what I'm talking about. And I was just like, and he was allergic to like vegetables. He was allergic to certain things that I was just like, how can you be allergic to a vegetable as a 1-year-old? It's very confusing to me. Again, I was back to this is a natural plant, but you can't tolerate it. You throw it up. And so again, I'm just starting to get really curious about it. He also was losing weight. And at the same, after Lillian was born, my daughter, I took her in as well. I shared about this earlier today, and I was accused of neglecting my children and not feeding them. But then I told them, well, I'm only allowed to give them 3 foods: chicken, apples, and green beans, and brown rice, 4 foods, and brown rice, because something wasn't on the test. So I gave them those 4 foods, and that was it. And they couldn't have anything else. And they were like, you're neglecting your kids, you're not feeding them enough, you know, and I was like, but they're developing fine, you know, I don't know what else to do. Like, how am I supposed to make them gain weight? So anyway, fast forward to Peter when he was 2, all of a sudden he developed asthma. And I didn't understand that. We went through tons of hospital visits where he couldn't breathe, where he had to get epinephrine, albuterol, steroids, all the things. We did croup, all the things. And we ended up on an inhaler. He could not do a steroid inhaler. He had terrible side effects to that. And so there we were with our nebulizer every 4 hours and our inhaler and the whole bit. And that's when I started digging really, really deep into asking questions and finding root causes. And I was like, what is causing his asthma? Why does he have all these food allergies? Why? Like, what is wrong with him inside that he can't breathe? And I researched and I researched and I read and I asked questions and I found mentors and I read books and I asked questions. I went to a natural doctor. I just did everything I could to figure out what was wrong. And here's what I discovered with Peter. Here's my second root cause. Lots of why questions. Number one, if you do your research, asthma is very, very linked to liver toxicity, liver damage. Asthma also has a lot of other root causes, but this was the first thing I found. People with asthma also are very deficient in magnesium and other trace minerals, and they must be on an anti-inflammatory diet. If you want to try to help them the natural way, yes, please give me hearts. Thank you so much. I so appreciate that. If you just joined, feel free to share this video with your friends. Thank you so much for being here. Love seeing you, Leslie and Eva and Natalie. Hey, share this to your page to help your friends. And here's how I found out about the magnesium thing. I read the side of his albuterol inhaler, and it had magnesium in the inhaler. So I started doing more research, and I found that obviously magnesium is a muscle relaxer. They use that in hospitals to help women not be in labor. But magnesium is a trace mineral, and I learned that asthmatics are very, very low in minerals. So I started giving him minerals, and I started giving him a liver cleansing herbal tincture. And what would you know? He started breathing again without the nebulizer and without the inhaler. I mean, can you believe it? Can you believe it? I couldn't believe it. This was my 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, maybe he was 3 by the time I started the liver tincture. He could breathe. It was incredible. At around the same time, I started learning about real food and removing chemicals. So I started removing chemicals from our home. I started getting rid of shampoos and soaps. I got rid of our laundry detergent. I got rid of anything that would cause any asthmatic reaction. His skin cleared up. Shocking. His skin cleared up. He had weird rashes all the time. So thankful. It was such a hard time. And for years since, I've always worked on Peter's health. And there's so many more things that go into Peter's health, but I'm going to move on and fast forward to the third story because we're already at 8:53 and I'm so desperate to not take your time too long. All right, third story, okay? So root cause of asthma. There's so many root causes and so many ways to work on healing asthma, and I'm going to share with you in just a minute about that. But let's move on to the third story, okay? Third story is after I had my 4th baby. When I had my 4th baby, my oldest, Peter, was 4. And we had moved a couple different times. Let's see, I had Peter and then Lillian. Nat was deployed for 14 months during that time. I actually moved houses while Nat was in Iraq. A very close friend of mine flew to Alaska and helped me move homes with these 2 little babies. And then we moved away from Alaska, and I had a miscarriage while we were moving. And then we lived in a barn for 2 months, this disgusting barn for 2 months, and I got pregnant with my 3rd. Then we moved into the house that we built, and then I had that baby, and then 9 days after I had my 4th baby, we moved to Indiana. 9 days. I was still bleeding, okay? And then we lived in there for 2 years, and I had my 4th baby, and then my oldest was 4, and he turned 5 the month after I had my 4th baby. And very soon after I had my fourth baby, I crashed. My husband was working 60 hours a week. We were out of the military at that time, never really saw him, and I just crashed. I remember being in the fetal position on the floor of our living room, calling one of my mentors in Colorado, weeping. Like, how am I supposed to function? I have 4 little children, a husband who I never see. I have to cook. And at this time, remember, I was making all of our food from scratch. I was still working on Peter's diet. I was still working to make sure that Peter could breathe. And I had Lillian and Caleb and then a little baby who I was nursing. And I nursed all my babies. It was intense. And I remember people saying to me, well, of course you're tired. You have 4 kids, 4 and under. But this was not just tired. This was such a deep, dark fatigue and depression, and it was I was not functioning. And soon after I crashed, I found out that we were moving again. So we moved when Timothy was 5 months old. And when he was 4 months old, while Nat was working, I drove the 4 little kids an hour and a half north to look for houses for days on end to try to find us a house to live in. Apartments, houses, all by myself with all the kids. And I was barely hanging on by a thread. At the time, I learned, hi friends, feel free to share this video. I'm almost done, so thank you so much for joining. But at the time, I really didn't know how to take care of myself. I really didn't even know what I needed, but I started doing my research. I asked Nat, I said, babe, I realized that how old was I at the time? I was 27, I think. I said, look, I realize that I can, hi Holly, hi Danielle, hi Kayla. I said, I realized that I could go on thyroid meds, antidepressants, sleeping pills. I could do all of that. I could go to a doctor, I could get the meds, and I could do it. But I'm 27. I have many years ahead of me, and I really want to learn how to rebuild or build my body so that I'm strong, so that I can take care of my children, so that I don't feel this way. I guess maybe by nature I'm just a fighter. Hey Kevin, thanks. I'm gonna go a little bit over, but that's okay. It's good to see you, bud. But I knew I had to figure this out. I prayed, I asked questions, I found mentors, I found books, I researched, I cried, I did everything I could do for my kids. I took lots of naps. I took 2 naps a day. Of course, after we moved, when my 4th baby was 5 or 6 months old, of course I crashed all over again. I mean, I wasn't doing super well, but then I had like another crash. And at that point, I was waking up at around 6:30 or 7 to nurse the baby. I would make everybody's breakfast, get Nat off to work, and then at 9 a.m. I would go to sleep until 11. And the kids would just watch TV or movies. Sometimes Nat would try to come back home. And then I would get up, I would make lunch, and then at about around 1 p.m., I would put all 4 of the kids for a nap, and I would nap for 2 hours again. And then I would get up at 3, and then I would somehow make it to around 7 or 8 at night, and then I was jazzed. And then I couldn't fall asleep at night. And then I would wake up at 3 a.m. shaking like a maniac. It was intense. It was intense. And here's what I learned. Here's my root cause for number 3. I learned that I had adrenal fatigue. If you learn about your adrenal glands, these two tiny little kidney bean shaped glands that they sit right on top of your kidneys, I learned that they were shot. Like, they were done. Your adrenal glands are in charge of managing the stress in your life and in your body. And mine were done. And also, I learned more about liver toxicity. Of course, I had learned about that about Peter as well, but I learned about that for myself from all the years of vaccines and Tylenol. Y'all, I used to live on Tylenol and ibuprofen. I used to take it like candy. All the foods that I ate growing up, all the antibiotics that I had taken, it was just years of buildup in my body. And yes, I had, like I talked about in my first story, I was able to get better. But again, I didn't know how to strengthen myself and be well. All I knew was how to get sick and then react and then not know what to do. And so I got in touch with really great natural doctors and got on some great things. And again, I'm not here to sell you what I did, but I'm telling you my root cause. I know you guys get it. So here's how I'm going to close the video tonight. Here, I'm going to tell you really quickly a couple of the books that I did read, and I'm not selling these to you. Y'all are so sweet. I just love you so much. Love you, friends, so much. There's so much hope for you. There's so much hope for you or whoever you know who's suffering. And I'm going to talk about that in a second too. Number 1, there is a book called Healing the 5 Childhood Diseases. I can't remember who's the author. I will post the link to the book. I do not have an Amazon affiliate link. I will post the link to the book in the video. Number 2, somebody who I have followed for 8 years, chrisbeatcancer.com. I am not amazing, but thank you so much. I'm just a broken person who needs hope and healing. Second person I followed was Chris Beat Cancer. chrisbeatcancer.com. I have never had cancer, but I love what Chris talks about. Third thing I really love is the Weston Price. I'm not a 100% Weston Price like fan, but Weston Price taught me that eating fat was good and that we are really messed up with the standard American diet, the SAD, okay? I learned from the book Nourishing Traditions, the first part of that book, I learned about food and how God intended it to be, that cows are actually supposed to eat grass, not grain. And Food Inc., of course, was a helpful documentary for me. So many people, my friend Bright, my friend Corey, they mentored me. I'm probably forgetting people to name who mentored me. Bright, I remember telling me about this one lady who talked about adrenal health, and I do not remember her name. But I used to read her website all the time. I would just Google anything. I read things from the library. I checked out DVDs. I mean, I just did everything I could to learn all that I could. And of course, since 5 years ago, I've just been blessed to learn more. So what about you? What about you? How are you suffering? What are you suffering with? And what is the root? And there may be more than one root. And sometimes you'll find one root and you'll kind of fix that root and you'll come up with another root, and that's okay too. Can't do everything all at once. You got to start somewhere. I remember the day that I stopped drinking coffee and Coke and I started drinking water. It was like life-changing. I did not grow up drinking water. I didn't drink water until I was in my 20s. Never. Like, I always drank something else, or I just drank nothing at all. I was hugely dehydrated. Katie, I don't believe that roots are genetic. I don't. I believe that we can change our genes. I do. I do believe that genetics has to do with it. Epigenetics has to do with things, but our people in our society tell us, well, it's just in my genetics, so this is my problem. That is a lie. That is a bondage. That's a handcuff. Okay? If you have been told that you are genetically predisposed for something and you're just gonna have it, that's a handcuff. And we can that's not what I want to talk about tonight. And if that offended somebody, I'm so sorry, but we can change it. So what is it that you're suffering with, and what kind of roots can you find? Here's my encouragement, is to start asking the right questions. We've got to change the question. We have to change the question. The question isn't, am I predisposed by my genes, or am I allowed to have Diet Coke, like I talked about at the beginning? And it's not about being a freak and being a legalistic, annoying, crazy person. It's just not. But we have to learn how to ask the right questions. We question natural remedies in our society, and we use Band-Aids. We just Band-Aid everything. I've got this problem, so I'm just going to take, whatever to help me feel better, but then it doesn't address the root issue. Somebody gets sick at the age of 35 or 40 with something terrible, and they've been healthy their whole life. And people say, well, she's been healthy her whole entire life. Why is she all of a sudden sick? It doesn't work like that. You don't just suddenly get something. And I feel like the hate mail is coming to me right now. And so I'm just here to bring the truth. I'm here to bring you hope. And if you reject the truth, I'm so sorry for you. Like, I am. Somebody has to tell you this. Like, if you don't know the truth, it's time. It's time to realize that you can be well. That you can be well. You can't be perfectly well, but you can't just keep slapping a Band-Aid on it. Okay? Yes, Deb, there's not going to be any hate mail. You're right. But I know I'm putting myself out there, so it's fine. If you ask me, if somebody asks me about headaches, diabetes, cancer, asthma, any diagnosed thing, I'm always going to ask, what do you eat? How many pills have you taken in your life? Where have you been? Have you been to a foreign country? Do you have parasites? Do you have liver toxicity? Do you have, do you poop? Any of you who I have done any kind of encouraging with, I always ask you, how often do you poop, right? We don't realize that our bodies were made to work a certain way. And when they're not, we're going to be sick. And if we don't know we're sick, it's lying under there. We only see the surface, but there's stuff underlying everything. You can do this. You can do this. You can find somebody who will help you with real solutions and real answers. You really can be well, but it is a process, and you cannot expect to just be healed and well in a heartbeat. It takes time. I mean, my mom, she has been through a lot of time with me trying to get well, and I don't regret any of it, because this is my story to benefit you. So here's the thing I'm going to leave you with. Y'all knew I would bring out Jesus, because I'm not ashamed of the gospel. If you don't know Jesus, for me, he's your root healer in every way. Your emotional root healer, your depression root healer, everything. And depression has so much to do with liver health, just FYI. But here's what I'm going to say. If your faith is in Christ, this is a promise for you from Romans 5. And it says, if your faith is in Christ, you have peace with God through the Lord Jesus Christ. And through him, we obtain access by faith into his grace in which we stand. We rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. And here's the promise to you that I want to give you tonight. But not only that, we rejoice in our sufferings. So if you are suffering and your faith is in Christ, he's there for you. You're not alone. You're not left to yourself. You're not forgotten. He sees you. He hasn't just been ignoring you. Because I know you feel like that. I know you just feel so alone in your suffering. But we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So that's from Romans 5, if you are suffering, whether you know God or not, if you have suffered, there is a purpose in it. I have suffered greatly in my life with my health. And it wasn't my choice, and I'm not mad about it. I'm not mad that I spent years working on my son's health. I'm not mad for all the times that I had to help my son breathe, for all the nights I was awake with him, for all of the moments that I felt so helpless and alone. I'm not mad about it. Because now I can share with you that you're not alone. My 12-year-old son, I was always told he'll grow out of his asthma. Well, of course he hasn't. But he doesn't, we never use a nebulizer. We never use an inhaler. We have not used that in a long time. He still gets a little respiratory-ish, but he knows what to do to fix it. And he's better than he's ever been, but it's been a process. And same with me. I am better than I've ever been, but it's a process. And I've had to work really hard on my health, and I've had to pray a lot, and I've had to continue to learn. I can't come to a place where I've just arrived and I know everything. So there's hope for you, okay? There's hope for you. And if you're just joining, I'm wrapping up, so you're gonna wanna watch the replay. But please feel free to tag anyone in this. Please refrain from messaging me to ask me to help you with your health. I have lots of resources that I can point you towards to help you, but I'm not going to be able to perfectly tell you what to do, because everybody's body is different, everybody's story is different, and I do want to help you, but that's why I did this public video, so that you could just learn this first step. Of course, I do have resources that can help you immediately, but I'm not here to sell anything. Hi, friends. So anyway, I love you. You are loved. You're not forgotten. You're seen. I pray this was a blessing to you. Thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, may God bless you. Thank you so much for joining. It's time to watch Chip and Jo. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.